Welcome everybody. Today we have the privilege of interviewing Professor Edgardo Muñoz, a professional with multiple hats, an educator, a legal practitioner, and a member of the prestigious Advisory Council for the CISG. This is an exclusive interview sponsored by the New Generation, CAM-CCBC, which is a commission of young professionals idealized to promote the new generation of dispute resolution practitioners. We are very grateful for Professor Edgardo to be here with us today, and also Professor Renata, who is joining us as an interviewer. So without further ado, let's begin. Welcome, professors. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Maura. Thank you, Professor Edgardo. It's a huge pleasure to be able to have this talk with you. And I will start with a very broad question regarding your academic background and your career background. If you could share with our young audience your academic and your career background for us to know you a little bit better, please.
Yes, let me start by thanking Maura Polidoro from NewGen group associated with CAM-CCBC. It's a real pleasure to be here in your podcast, and also a privilege to be beside Renata Steiner, prestigious professor on private law in Brazil. Yes, I am a national from Mexico, and I come from a region called Jalisco, which capital is Guadalajara. So I studied at a university there, and when I was a student, I think I did two things that changed my perspective about what I wanted to do and become professionally. The first of them is that I did 1 year in France as a student exchange, and the second thing I did is the Bismuth of Vienna. And these two programs were very influential for me, opened my eyes to international law and also comparative law. And later on, when I finished my law degree, I embarked in a first Master of Laws in England, in the University of Liverpool. Later on, I went back to work as a corporate lawyer in my city, but very soon I realized that I wanted to go back to Europe, and I got a job, a very good opportunity to work for someone who is probably the world expert on the sales convention, the UN Sales Convention, whose name is Professor Ingeborg Spencer. I was part of a big project she had related to the sale of goods in more than 60 jurisdictions, and I was the assistant researching the law in Latin America, Spain and Portugal. And so I spent there 3 years working besides her and doing at the same time my PhD, which I completed there. And later on, I spent 4 years as well in Geneva working as a lawyer in a firm, very international law firm, Swiss law firm, but with a very wide international scope, until I decided to go back to my country and become, as you mentioned, a professor and at the same time an arbitration practitioner.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Professor Edgardo Muñoz. The second question would be, how did you end up studying CISG? But I think you already gave us some path on how CISG entered your life. But let me then rephrase it and ask you, did you have, as a law school student, did you study CISG besides the Bismuth? Was that a subject in the law school in Mexico?
No, it wasn't. Even though Mexico has been a member state of the CISG since the 89 probably, that was not something I had an opportunity to study in my JD degree. But I, however, my first encounter with the CISG was through the Bismuth of Vienna. That's when I realized that there was this international convention for the sale of goods, right? And obviously from the beginning it caught my interest. It's, as you know, the CISG is a very, we could say, modern, sophisticated body of contract law, and this is how I became familiar with it. Later on, when I was working at Basel University with Professor Schwenzer, the CISG was something you could not miss, because even though I was working on Latin American law, everything was viewed from the scope of the CISG, because we were trying to explain the variances and similarities of different contract laws around the world through the vocabulary and the eyes of the CISG or the UNIDROIT principles on international commercial contracts.
And now, as a professor in Universidade Pan-Americana in Guadalajara, do your students have the opportunity to have CISG in their G-Day?
Yes, regrettably for them, probably.
I don't think so.
No.
Yes, I teach international business transaction, and in my program the CISG is one of the main components. I also had tried to equip our library with the best about the CISG and international contracts, so it's something certainly that we study every semester, or well, I say we study because I also keep learning about this. Yes.
Well, your journey, in CISG is for as very inspiring, especially because you also come from a Latin America background, and you have proven us that it is possible to come from a Latin America country and understand and study CISG and even become a member of the CISG Advisory Council. Could you share some thoughts about becoming a member and how this has been important in your journey so far?
Well, it's been very important, and I consider that a privilege, a great opportunity to have been co-opted, admitted to this group of scholars and practitioners who have worked through the last decades on opinions regarding the interpretation and application of the CISG. I can say that it was my dream as a muti, as a participant of the Bismuth, to sometime become close to this group of people, especially because they are all great human beings, and the work they have produced is really of great quality and has been helping a lot, not only to understand the CISG and its correct application, but also to as an instrument of law reform for other domestic laws. I think the CISG may be undervalued, underestimated sometimes, but the contribution that the CISG and everything that turns around this instrument has been very beneficial, not only for international trade but also for legal reform of domestic laws.
Great. And from CISG to arbitration, is this a happy fusion? How did you get up being an arbitrator?
Well, it's another dream I had, and I guess many of the NewGen members also have this
Indeed.
this goal in mind. And it started the same. I mean, CISG and arbitration, international contracts and arbitration, for me, they have always gone together. It's a very nice marriage, I think, because international arbitration represents an efficient, cost-efficient, gentleman's way of solving disputes. It could be internally in some countries or internationally as well in many regions. And on the other hand, the CISG is also about that. It's an instrument that offers fairness, an equilibrium between the interest of buyers and sellers, and also reduces legal costs in many aspects. It is not the same to try to find out what law applies or trying to negotiate a choice of law clause than knowing in advance that the CSG would apply to many international sale of goods, and that this instrument has been created by experts and continue to be studied and applied by experts. And a last point I would say is that there is no better professionals or to apply the CSG than the people who does arbitration, because they are more sensible to comparative law, to foreign law, and to the need to really apply the law well.
Yeah, in your answers, Professor, you have said from you studied in Mexico, and then you went to the UK and then to Switzerland. I know last year you've been in Italy. Now you're in Brazil, speaking to us in Avenida Paulista. How do you balance your family life with this international career?
It's not always easy, but indeed I have been an academic tourist for some years before, especially when I was not married, because actually my journey did not stop in Switzerland. I did also a year in the United States, an LLM in California, and now that I have kids and family, what I do is I try to bring them with me, because especially when I am for a long term in a country, I think it's an opportunity that I should also share with my family. Last year that I was in Italy for 3 months teaching, I brought my family with me.
Great. And the last question, Professor, would be, could you tell us more about Edgardo, that we wouldn't, something that we wouldn't know about you, that we don't know reading your text about you, some curiosity or something about your personal life?
Probably that I'm very stubborn. In many aspects, probably that's my quality and my defect as well. I had a lot of grit, for example, for sports. I like every type of sports, and I change practicing sports every 6 months or 1 year. I do swimming, I do bicycling, I do football, I do yoga.
Sports arbitration.
I do sports arbitration as well, especially in the sports of gymnastics. And probably that, and that I am a lover of literature as well, of fiction, and I have dared to write 2 books for law students, but in a narrative way, in a storytelling way. Yes.
Nice. Great. Well, we would like to thank you for your generosity for being here today with us. It was great hearing your journey so far, and please thank you very much for sharing this with us. And I don't know if Maura has any.
No, I don't. I'm satisfied. Maybe if we talk a little bit about the gymnastics arbitration, it caught my attention.
Yeah, with pleasure. Yeah, as a coincidence, or probably as an accident, while I was working in Switzerland as a lawyer in commercial arbitration, I also had to do to replace someone in the firm that was in charge of the sports arbitration. In Switzerland, this is a big market, and you would have sometimes arbitration teams that are divided in commercial and sports arbitration in this country. And at some point, the young lawyer doing sports arbitration decided to leave the group, and I stepped in. And the first cases I had were about gymnastics. We were representing judges in the floor judges in a very important case, and including many from East Europe, but also Mexicans. So what happened is that when I was back in Mexico as a professor, the Mexican Gymnastics Federation knew who were I, and that I could represent many of their members, and I represent them pro bono during various years. Probably during 3 years, I did pro bono representation before the internal tribunals of the International Gymnastics Federation. until more recently, 2020, 21 probably, or 2020, that the International Gymnastics Federation, or more in particular, the body they have to resolve disputes upon invitation of the Mexican National Federation, accepted me as one of his members in the appeal tribunal. And so I've been decided many of the international gymnastics cases in that tribunal. And later on, because I was there, I was also admitted to the list of sports arbitrators from the core of the CAS is the core of sports arbitration in Lausanne, the same city, Lausanne, Switzerland. And yeah, that's my really sports legal side as well.
And just for as a curiosity, yesterday Professor Edgardo was in FGV with my students, and he explained to the students strict liability with a sports case, which was very, very interesting for the students to hear.
Yes.
So it's a
sports liability is a principle in doping cases. In that you are strictly liable if any prohibited substance is inside your body, and there is nothing you can do to be exempted. What you can do is to lower your sanction by proving that it was an accident, that you were diligent, that it was unplanned, for example.
Very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I don't know if there is any further question.
Well, we have 35 questions, but I think it's okay.
It's okay. Well,
you, Professor.
It's been a pleasure to be with you and to talk to you and with the people from NewGen, CAM-CCBC.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Yep.